Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Focus on Your Future. My name is Anna Morrison, and I'm the founder and director of Amazing Apprenticeships. And Focus on Your Future is brought to you today in partnership with Amazing Apprenticeships and Gen Healthy Minds as part of National Apprenticeship Week 2022. We're so delighted that we will be joined by George Anderson from Gen Healthy Minds, who's going to be running us this fantastic session. It's going to last about half an hour, and then we're going to move into Q&A at the end. Today is all about you, apprentices, past and current, and also apprentice supporters. We know that there's a huge network, a community of individuals that surround apprentices and make sure that you really thrive on your programs. So today is about focusing on your future. We're going to be equipped with some tips and techniques, and I think come away all feeling really motivated and inspired. So, George, thank you so much for giving up your time today to be with us. I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. And yes, it is wonderful to be back again today. I think I did a session in National Apprenticeship Week last year as well. And I'm always delighted to spend time talking to apprentices and those, as Anna said there, the community that supports them as well, because this is such a great opportunity to get under the skin of things like goals. Or last year we talked about energy and motivation, and it's just such a critical time, I think, in so many of our careers. So today's session is this title here: 5 top tips to turbocharge your goals. Now, the theme for the year, as Anna mentioned there, is focus on your future. So what better topic to turn our attention to than goals? But before we begin, before we get into these tips, what I want you to do is to bring to mind a goal that you are pursuing right now. What is something that is important to you? What are you focusing on at the moment? And, you know, we might as well make this real, and then you can use this as the context, the backdrop, if you will, to the information that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Now, if you're here as an apprentice, which I know many of you will be, then probably it's likely that one of the goals that you're pursuing at the moment is to get to the end or complete your apprenticeship program. But look, this isn't a setting average goals webinar. So I'm going to be encouraging you as we go through the session today to really expand on this. I want to be challenging you to think bigger, to truly turbocharge your goals. And finally, before we dive into some of these tips, there's always the question, well, what does turbocharging goals even mean? I mean, what's that all about? Is it just speak to make you come on to this session because it sounds important, it sounds exciting? Well, look, we can't have a conversation about goals without also talking about motivation. Motivation really is the fuel in the furnace that drives us, that keeps us moving forwards towards something important. How can we breathe this fire into our goals so they become magnetically meaningful? How can we turn them into something that gets us leaping out of bed in the mornings, filled with passion and purpose? Now, I'm not promising you, I'm sorry, I can't promise you that in 30 minutes, I'm going to give you all of the answers. Even with an unlimited amount of time together, nobody can give you this fire, this passion, and this purpose. But if you make the commitment to yourselves, if you're ready right now to say, I'm going to act on the information that I'm about to share with you today, then I promise I will give you the very best of what I've got, and we'll see what kind of a difference it can make to you and your life. So let's get started. The first of these goals, or these top tips rather, is to stretch yourself. Now, I mentioned earlier, this isn't just a setting average goals webinar. That's not what we're all about. We want to turbocharge them. And this involves stretching ourselves. So here, I want you to try this, okay? And your webcam's on so I can see you. I can tell if you're doing it or not. How many of you are now looking at the webcam? Is it on? Can you really see me? But what I want you to do is I want you to reach up as high as you can into the air with both your arms. Really stretch up as high as you can. Now, are you doing it? Now, I know some of you will be sitting there with your hands by your side thinking, I'm not doing that, it looks ridiculous. Some of you will be holding your hands up thinking like I just said, stick them up or something. Some of you, a few of you, will be really stretching. I just saw Anna there stretching. Your webcam is on, Anna, so I can definitely see that you're taking part here. But the question is, have you really gone as high as you can? Can you go any higher? Can you stretch yourself that little bit further? What if you were to stand up? What if you were to stand on your chair and stretch as high as you can? You're capable of more. And this is usually the case. We're all capable of more than we think. How high could you go if you really stretched yourself? Now, if you're sitting there thinking, well, that sounds like hard work, stretching myself, getting to the end of my apprenticeship, that sounds like a perfectly adequate goal. Why would I want to go harder, go further, stretch myself? Why bother? But here's a challenge to that. Don't ask the question, why? Ask the question, why not? Why not stretch yourself? Why not see how far you can go? Why not see how much you can contribute along the way, how much you can learn about your work, about yourself, how much of an impact you can have? Why not? This is about turbocharging, not just ticking a box. So tip number one is to stretch yourself. My second tip for you today to turbocharge your goals is to set a goal, or at least to craft that goal in such a way that it will change you along the way. I've done a few ultra endurance challenges over the course of the last few years. One of my very first real challenges was to run a 100-mile, 24-hour ultra marathon. Now, this is as pointless as it sounds. I mean, we are literally running around in circles for 24 hours, like running around in circles for a whole day. What's the point in that? And it wasn't getting to the end of the goal that was the most significant thing for me, but who I became along the way. And this is what I want to encourage you to think about in relation to your goals. For me, I had to become more disciplined with my training, with my preparation, with my kit, with my recovery. I had to ask for help. I had to learn how to do that. Here was me, George Anderson, the running coach, as I was doing a lot of work with at the time. And now all of a sudden, I've got to say, I don't have all of the answers. And it took a good bit of humility and courage and vulnerability, actually, for me to do that. I had to surrender control along the way as well, because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. It's not like training for a 10K or a half or even a full marathon where you can get to close to or even the full distance of the event. There's no way I was going to be running close to 100 marathons in 100 miles in training. So I had to surrender this need that I had for control, and I learned how to do that along the way. There's a wonderful Jim Rohn quote. If you're familiar with the work of Jim Rohn, you may know this quote already. It's one of my very favorite quotes. He said, "Don't set a goal for what you will achieve, but rather for what it will make of you in order to achieve it." Don't set a goal for what you will achieve, but rather for what it will make of you in order to achieve it. Wow. I think I read that quote for the first time around the time that I was going for this 100-mile ultra marathon. And it really made me think about focusing my attention on what some of those character strengths, some of those elements of my personality and my character that I could develop, that I could build along the way. Who could I become as a result of the pursuit of this goal, not just this successful accomplishment? So I challenge you and I urge you and encourage you to craft your goal in such a way that it challenges you, that it changes you in a way that's more important perhaps than that end result. Because what's really cool about this is that it transfers to other areas of your life as well. So you may have these goals within your apprenticeship program. Maybe that's the goal that you're focusing on. But if you become more disciplined, if you become more confident, if you become more organized as a result of your pursuit of that particular goal, guess what? That's going to have marked impacts on other areas of your life as well. I can distinctly remember sitting on a chair about 65, 70 miles into this event. As I said, it's a 5-mile loop, this 100-miler, and you've got 24 hours to do as many of these loops as you can. And I'd set my own personal goal as 100 miles. And I was sitting on this chair at about 3 o'clock in the morning, 65, 70 miles in, because there was a transition area and I just sat down. Big mistake. Don't sit down 3/4 of the way through an ultramarathon because you find it very difficult to get back up again. But I sat down for a few moments and I was really having those dark moments, those thoughts. Am I good for this? Can I complete this? Am I going to be able to get to the end? And I realized something because I was so tired by that point. Every fiber of my being was saying, George, you've just run 65 miles. That's enough. Like, it's impressive. Well done. You don't need to do any more. You've got nothing to prove to anybody else. You can just tap out now and it's fine. But I knew that I'd already set this goal of running 100 miles and I had the time to do it. But it seemed like such a long way still to go, 35 or so miles. And I realized something in that moment. I realized that actually I don't have to run the rest of this race. I don't have to run 35 miles now. All I have to do is get up out of this chair and start. All I have to do is to leave this transition area, and then eventually, in maybe an hour or so's time, I'll have done this next lap and I'll be back. And I just need to do that a few more times. But right now, I just got to start. And that just start realization, that just start mindset changed me in that moment as well. And I've translated that to many, many other areas of my life as well, way beyond the confines of physical endurance and challenges. So as you test and stretch yourself in pursuit of whatever this big, important goal is of yours, who will you become along the way? The third of these tips for you today is to create a vision. Now, when we write goals down or we set goals, we'll write it. We'll get an idea in our mind as to what it is that we want to accomplish. But what will it look like when you've actually achieved it? How will you know? What will the moment of achievement be? We got to get an idea in our minds as to how we're going to know when we have successfully completed this goal. Will you be maybe opening a letter or an email from your employer to say, congratulations, you've completed your apprenticeship? Will you be being told that you've been selected for the next stage of the program? Maybe you're sitting there meeting with your new team for the very first time following a promotion. What is the vision? What is the moment of achievement? And here's what I want you to do right now, actually. I want you to bring to mind this moment of achievement. Paint it in as much detail in your mind's eye as possible to see yourself in this moment of achievement. Add the color, add the vividness, add some of the emotion, and then just float down into yourself so that you're there in this moment. You're looking out through your own eyes and you can see what you see, you can hear what you hear, and you can feel that intensity of this feeling of success and completion. What does it look like? Who else is around you? What will you be doing? How will you be standing or sitting? What will you be saying? Maybe how do you anticipate you're going to feel when you achieve this goal? What might other people be saying about you or to you? And what's it going to lead to next? What are you thinking of now you've accomplished this are going to be the next steps? And who else is likely to benefit? How we think about this as just for us, but actually what impact are you going to have had along the way to conquering this goal? What greater purpose does it serve in your ambition? Now that vision itself may be enough to help stoke the fires of your motivation on those days where you just don't feel like it. So return to it regularly, fire it up, but stay grounded at the same time. Now we need to acknowledge that there are going to be bumps along the way. Now we know where we want to be and we know where we are right now, but things won't always go smoothly. You're going to face rejection and you're going to fail along the way as well. You'll make mistakes. You'll miss the mark. Change will happen along the way without your consideration, your consultation, or your consent. And guess what? You're going to embrace all of this. It's a part of your journey towards whatever great things lie ahead of you. Create that vision and let that be the fuel to your fire to turbocharge these goals. Let's have a look at what we've got coming up next then. Set objectives. This is the next top tip. We need to set objectives. Have a think about that goal again. Just bring it to your mind's eye one more time and write down this question that I'm about to ask you. I'll give you moments to get a piece of paper and a pen. Didn't know there was going to be writing to do today, did you? Write down this question. Which 3 strategic objectives are going to help me get there? I'll say that again. Which 3 strategic objectives are going to help me get there? So when you think about that goal, you'll think about the objectives that you can work towards that are going to help you get to where you want to be. And I don't just mean complete the first year of the apprenticeship program, complete the second year of the apprenticeship program. Like, we're going beyond the basics here. Like, what else is going to help you become all that you could be in the pursuit of this goal? Perhaps it's something like completing a course on public speaking confidence, or maybe joining and attending your local Toastmasters club. Highly recommend that, by the way, if public speaking confidence is one of your objectives that you think could be helpful for you. But maybe it's something else, like getting a place on a voluntary committee within your organization. Perhaps that's an objective that's going to help you get there, around really stamping your own personal brand on this, so you become head and shoulders above the rest, and you are identified as somebody who can contribute. Or maybe it's mastering a new technology, mastering a new process, a new skill, maybe something you can't do right now, and maybe you could get away with just being average at it and still complete that apprenticeship. But what if you set that objective as mastery? This process, this technology, so you become the go-to person to answer questions on that particular thing. Which 3 strategic steps do you need to take that are going to get you to where you want to be faster and with this turbocharge? Now, that's not the end of it, right? Because once you have these objectives, let's say you have them written down. If I came knocking on your door tomorrow, now there's a scary thought. So here I am, you wake up in the morning, you open the door, and it's George asking you this question. If I said to you, show me your week's schedule, show me what you've got planned this week, right? I've got my foot in the door, so you can't slam it in my face. What would you be able to show me? Would there be significant blocks of time dedicated to striving towards these objectives? Or would they just be languishing in the background? Yeah, I know I really should be taking some action on this. I've got the intentions, but it's not mapping across to your schedule. Strategic objectives won't happen. Goals won't happen. We'll just tick along and move forwards and become, at anybody else's agendas will get in our way, and we won't make the progress that we could make unless we take these intentions and take them and put them onto our schedule. Now, if these are your priorities, if you're saying, I'm not telling you what they should be, I've given you some examples there, but you'll know what your strategic objectives are because you've been writing them down, right? If these are your priorities, because this goal is important and you know that achieving the strategic objective is important, if that's your priority, it needs to be on your schedule. Because if you don't schedule your priorities, you'll end up prioritizing whatever else is on your schedule. Finally, our last top tip is to check in along the way. Now, a couple of years ago, on another daft challenge that I was on, this is I think this is the most recent one that I've done, actually. I climbed a mountain. Actually, that's a bit of an exaggeration. It wasn't really a mountain. It was more of a hill up in the Lake District, but it felt like a mountain, and there were lots of them. So give me this. I climbed a mountain. It was an event called the Frog Graham Round, or rather a challenge called the Frog Graham Round. If anybody's familiar with fell running and ultra running, you may have come across the Bob Graham Round. Well, this is the Frog. And what we had to do was to run and hike 42 miles around the Lake District and swim across 4 lakes, anticipating it was going to take around about 16 or so hours to do this. Now, I was fresh off the back of my second 100-mile ultra the year before. I was feeling fantastic. I was feeling strong. I was feeling, dare I say it, a little complacent, which ended up being my undoing, as I'll get to in a moment. But I came into that really motivated and confident that I was going to be able to accomplish this challenge. Well, it didn't go well. I got about a third of the way around and the weather was horrific. It was the worst weather that they'd had up in the lakes for a long time, and they get some pretty weathery days up there. And it was actually dangerous in the end for us to be on the mountains, given the lack of preparation that we'd put in compared to the conditions that were prevailing on the day. So I failed objectively because my goal was to complete the Frog Graham Round, and I wasn't able to accomplish this. Now, fortunately, I brought some of my thinky things into practice, and I thought about my approach to resilience. I thought about my approach to growth mindset. I thought about my approach to motivation and goals and learning. And I realized that actually I had made a few mistakes here. Number one of which was that I had been complacent. Just because I'd had a number of successes in the previous years, I disrespected this particular challenge and consequently hadn't prepared adequately for it. So that was a pretty big, humbling realization to have. And I realized I was never going to make that mistake again. So that was the first thing. I realized that I'd made mistakes and I needed to put things right. I needed to change things if I was going to successfully complete this the following year. And, spoiler alert, I was able to go ahead and do that. But in the process of doing this, in the process of training and preparing for the Frog Graham Round and the second pass, at times it really did feel like I wasn't getting anywhere. And I realized in this process that it was very similar to what it's like sometimes when you're actually climbing up a mountain or even a hill. You're climbing up and you're staring down at the ground the whole time. Occasionally you look up and you see, my goodness, there's still so much of this hill still to go. Or you look up and you think, oh, I'm almost at the top. Here's the top. Oh no, there's still more to go. It feels like you're just never getting where you want to be. And I realized that this was very similar to how I was feeling in terms of my progress towards the goal in the first place. But what I learned was that by just pausing, by stopping, and actually taking a look around from time to time along the way, I could see how far I had already come. I could see the changes I'd made this time compared with the previous time with my preparations. And I think this is so important. Again, it's another lesson that I've translated into many other areas of my life as well, especially around my business and my work, is that I can get to the end of the day and I think, my goodness, I've achieved nothing today. I've been running around, my hair on fire, responding to this and responding to that. And some days just feel like I'm just walking through quicksand, not getting anywhere at all. And I'm sure you've had days and experiences like this yourself. But by pausing and reflecting, looking back over the day, looking back over the week, looking back over the month or the year, or however long your time scale is, and actually looking at what progress you have already made. Look at where you are now compared with where you were a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, even a day ago. How is that progress tracking? How are you doing? Because if we focus on just how much further there is to come, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel demotivating. It can feel like we still got this impossible mission and task ahead of us. And if we want to be turbocharging our goals, well, we've got to be checking in. We've got to be looking at where we are right now. And as I said, how far we've already come. So I want to encourage you to really think about how you can build this technique into your day. I do this on a daily basis now. I check back and see what I've accomplished in the day. But just take a moment, maybe take a moment right now. Check in with yourself. Check in and look back as well as looking forwards. What have you already completed? What have you just started? What have you learned? It's not just what else is still to be done. Now, this regular checking in is really important to help us maintain our motivation, our drive, and our grit and perseverance as we keep working towards these long-term goals, because they're not going to be accomplished in a heartbeat. We have to have this perseverance to help us keep moving forwards. So just to finish off and sum up with all of this, setting goals, when we talk about setting goals and writing something down or even creating a vision, sometimes that can be the easy bit. We can all dream, we can all plan, we can all set these intentions. But the challenge is consistently showing up. It's breathing this fire of motivation into our goals, turbocharging your way to success. Keep that focus on the future. Keep it there. We want this focus on the future. That's what goals are all about. It's something that's outside of what we already have or are capable of. Keep that focus on the future in such a way that it magnetically draws you forwards. But at the same time, we need to remain grounded here in the present moment. Don't defer your happiness to some arbitrary time in the future. I'll be happy when I've conquered this goal. I'll be happy when I have more money. I'll be happy when I have that relationship or that status, or I've completed this thing. Strive to maintain that balance between drive and ambition on the one hand, and on the other hand, the satisfaction and the contentment of where you are right now. Thank you for your listening and attention today. I'm going to hand you over to Anna now and bring her back into the stream, because Anna, I believe you have a couple of questions to further this discussion, this conversation about goals and turbocharging.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, George. Just a brilliant framework to get us started with thinking about goal setting and focusing on our future, and the idea of leaping out of bed with purpose every day. I love. And also hearing about some of your sporting achievements as well. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. So something that we've been talking about quite a lot across our team and with employers and apprentices is a lot of apprentices will set the goal of completing their apprenticeship as the goal. You know, that's kind of the end point in mind. We even call it endpoint assessment, right? So
yeah,
kind of goal of trying to reach the end. But if we've got apprentices or, you know, other individuals listening in today thinking, actually, I want some other goals, kind of what kind of goals might they consider setting themselves? Where do you start if you've never done this kind of structured approach to goal setting?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, it's worth acknowledging that actually having, you know, completing an apprenticeship and getting to the end, it's a tremendous goal to have. It's the starting point. So we don't want to dismiss that entirely because it is going to be the major focus for so many people who are on these on the programs. However, when we're looking at going beyond that, of course we know that when we get to a point like finishing off an apprenticeship, that's not the end. That's a lead point to something else. So what is beyond that? Maybe it's getting onto the graduate program. Maybe it's getting a full-term job contract or an offer. Maybe it's getting a promotion or moving somewhere else in your business with your business and career. So thinking beyond just this endpoint, as well as keeping in mind the importance and the significance of completing that program, that's a good starting point, I think. But in amongst all of that as well, we like goals. Like, it's part of the model for holistic happiness is to have accomplishments and to be striving towards something. It can give us a sense of purpose and motivation as well, even if it's not a straight line from point A to point B. We're going to have these little wrinkles and dips up and down along the way, as we all know. But having other goals as well, maybe those objectives, as I mentioned there, around, you know, maybe having a goal around mastering a technology or getting better at and more confident at public speaking, which is something that really strikes the fear of God into so many people. But it's such a, you know, we had this conversation, Anna, before we came on today. Like, do I still get nervous when I'm presenting? I do a lot of this. Yes, I do. But actually, it's possible to take those nerves and that energy and almost that anxiety about it and turn it into a real positive focuser to say, this is important. And I've got an idea that I want to share. I want to communicate something. And I want to do this and have as much impact as possible. So maybe that's another goal, these strategic objectives that people are setting themselves to think about, not just how is this going to contribute to the endpoint goal, like the apprenticeship in this case, but also how is it going to benefit me as an individual? How am I going to change? How am I going to evolve along the way? And then, of course, setting other goals that are completely non-work related as well. We all have what's called like a wheel or a web of life, where career and business is just one of those segments. But we've got other segments like health and well-being. We've got finances, relationships, contribution to the community, study, personal development. There's a ton of other areas that we can also evolve and explore and set other goals in. So my advice really is to look at what's important to you, maybe where you're feeling there's a lack at the moment, and set some goals that feel manageable within those domains as well, and have the same approach with these 5 tips that I've shared today.
Thank you, George. And that leads really into another point that we're keen to explore, which is how many goals should you have? So you've talked about having personal goals, professional goals. Can you have too many goals? And what would you do if you feel like there are too many? Kind of where should we be aiming for? A couple in each area?
It is possible to have too many goals. And if you go back to what I mentioned there about here I am knocking on your front door in the morning saying, show me a schedule. And you say, well, actually, I'm spreading myself a little bit thin because I'm training for a marathon. I'm volunteering in the community. I'm doing voluntary stuff at work. I've obviously got my studies to do as well. I've got other work, and I'm just not managing to fit it all in. And that's not a failing on your part. We can spread ourselves too thin. So I think we need to sort of focus our attention on what's most important, but not neglect those other areas as well. I realized actually one of the goals that I haven't really been fully engaging in recently, over the last probably year or two, has been kind of activities that are completely unrelated to any of my professional or personal challenge goals. Things like just painting and creativity. So I've actually got into painting the little, used to do it when I was a kid, little Warhammer figures. Warhammer 40,000, if anybody's watching and knows about Warhammer 40K, then I used to love that stuff. My son's just getting into it now. So I started planning time into my week where I can actually spend half an hour or an hour getting into this flow state. And that's my goal, is to improve my skill in painting. But actually the real goal is just to do this with my son, for our relationship, and for just the sheer joy and love of doing that as well. But if I was in a really busy period of work, or if I had other challenges on, then that might drop down a little bit more. So I think we always need to be reassessing how well we're spreading ourselves, what goals we're pursuing at the moment, and be ready to say, well, this is an important goal for me this year, but not yet. I'm going to start that in March. I'm going to start that after Easter. I'm going to start that at a particular time, and then know that it's important, and then to really start exploring it then when we know we are going to have a little bit more bandwidth to do that.
So thinking about that then, with the time setting or the target setting around kind of milestones or key points, any considerations, any top tips around that? So how far forward should we be looking? How immediate? Should we have a little bit of a mix really of kind of immediate, midterm, long term? What do you think?
Yeah, I think certainly having lots of really long-term goals can be a stretch, can be a challenge, because you end up just not putting enough solid time into each of those long-term goals. And when the work we know around topics like grit, I mentioned about that grit and perseverance, and we need that, comes from a lot of the work from Angela Duckworth. If anybody wants, her book around grit is phenomenal, and she talks about having just a few of these really important goals. Like, you can't show grit and determination and perseverance, no quitting with like everything. Because if you say, right, I'm going to become like the very best I can possibly be at playing the violin, and that's going to involve me practicing 3-4 hours a day. At the same time, I'm going to become the best athlete that I can be. At the same time, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to master this new technology at work. Like, if you try and do that, then you end up burning yourself out. For no real gain, because eventually you end up just tanking. You're not going to be getting those benefits. So yeah, having some long-term goal that you're really committed to, and those strategic objectives that will get you there. But then yeah, having those short-term and medium-term goals as well. Some classic examples there around well-being. Often when we put all of our focus and emphasis on our businesses or on our careers or on an apprentice program, then that can sometimes be at the detriment of our health. or I haven't got time to go to the gym, I'm too busy, I haven't got time to go out for a walk, I haven't got time to plan healthy food, I've got to stay up late, so I'm going to compress my sleep schedule, and I haven't got time to spend time with my loved ones and other important people in my life. So we end up compromising on those areas in the false belief that it's going to help us free up the time to pursue these other long-term goals. Whereas the reality is we need those kind of short-term, almost the process is the goal itself. So it's not just about, well, I want to lose weight, tone up and get fit, therefore I need to eat well, make sure I get enough sleep and exercise regularly. Yeah, those will help with that, but actually those are ends in themselves, because they're the things that are going to give you the energy to pursue those other goals and feel like you have the mental and emotional bandwidth in order to cope with everything. And not just cope, actually, that's a bad use of language there, to thrive through all of this, to have these challenges and these experiences, and to feel like actually you're on top of things and that you're actually enjoying the process as well.
So if someone wasn't thriving or particularly enjoying it or making the progress that they hoped they might be making towards those goals, any tips for kind of getting it back on track?
Yeah, sure. And I think this is a really important point, Anne. So thanks for bringing that one up, because it can be very easy to attend an event like this, or to come to the big celebration that is National Apprenticeship Week, and think, well, everyone else is doing really well. Everyone else has got it together. Everyone else is thriving. It's just me that's struggling. It's just me that's suffering. And so I don't want to, ask for help, or I don't want to admit to that, because it's going to make me look like I'm not coping. Whereas the reality is that at any point in time, there's always going to be people around you as well who are struggling a little bit, and who maybe aren't feeling like they're thriving or engaging with those goals. And I think a big part of that comes back to, well, actually, first of all, before I say anything else, I should always say that your ultimate tool when it comes to mental health support, looking after yourself, is putting up your hand, whether that's physically or metaphorically, and actually reaching out to get help. To say, look, I'm actually struggling a little bit at the moment. Is there any way I can get some additional support? Because when we reach out for help, then it just takes a lot of the pressure off, and we realize that actually that support and that help is there in the most part. But one of the challenges, I think, that a lot of people face when it comes to their goals is you can get motivated for the goal and it feels fantastic. Imagine how amazing it's going to feel to complete this. But then the actions that are going to lead there, the things, the daily grind, doesn't feel so thrivey. It doesn't feel so awesome. It's like I have things on my schedule that's like, I don't really fancy doing that. Oh, I've got to do that. I've got to plan this. I've got to do that. I've got to make that call. I don't really want to do those things. I don't leap out of bed thinking, oh, great, I get to review something today, or I get to write this new presentation. I don't feel so driven towards those things until I remind myself that there's a connection between the what and the why. The thing that I'm doing, the list, the to-dos, and the reason why they are important, the reason why I'm doing these in the first place. And I'm not just doing them. And actually, even if you're being told where you have to be and you're being told what you have to do because you're working through the program, it's like, well, I didn't choose to do these things and I have to do them. Try and see the value in them. See how they are a part of the puzzle that's going to lead you to where you want to be. Because if that goal is important, this is a part of the process. And the process, as we discovered in the course of today's session, or as we've explored today, is almost, if not more, important than the end point itself.
Thanks, George. That's such wise words. And final question, are you allowed to change your goals? When do you know when you've achieved a goal? Yeah? Okay, good.
Yeah, that's big time. I think there's a real thing in society and around in our culture, and probably driven in part by the prolific nature of social media. We say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to focus on this goal. Take it outside of the apprenticeship program for a moment, just for example, but like a health effect, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to train for this race, or it might be with a program. I've started this program, here's my goal, I'm going to complete it. And then actually get a little bit further down the line thinking, actually, that's not really doing it for me. I think I've made a mistake. And an example from my own life, and I often, we don't want to quit, but at the same time, we don't want to lean our ladder against the wrong wall, climb to the top and just push through it and realize that, oh, actually, no, it was the wrong place. I didn't really, I didn't want to achieve this goal. It means nothing to me. A few years ago, before I really got into the big, chunky, ultra endurance challenges, when I was at Loughborough at university, I was a 400-meter runner. And I decided when I was in my 30s that I wanted to go back, and not to Loughborough, but I wanted to go back to 400s, which is a sprint, essentially. I've been doing marathons, and I wanted to go back to sprints, thinking, well, now I know more about myself, my own physiology, how I adapt to training. Now I know more about how to train as well. I'm going to try and, defy the odds and get quicker in my 30s than I was in my 20s. Well, I got about 6 weeks, 5, 6 weeks into that training, and I realized how horrible 400-meter training is. If anybody has ever tried training for 400 meters, it is the most hideous. It's just painful. It's horrible, right? So that's not to put you off if you're thinking about getting into athletics, but it's hideous, right? And I realized that I didn't even like it when I was at Loughborough, but at least when I was at Loughborough, I was surrounded by my friends, and I was part of a community, part of a team. We were in it together, like that trench mentality. We're all going through the same challenging times together, pushing ourselves, encouraging ourselves, supporting ourselves, or each other rather. And I didn't have any of that when I reattempted this goal. So a few weeks in, having made this big, hey, I'm going to do this challenge, I'd emailed my email subscribers, I put it on social media, but I had to decide, you know what, this isn't the right challenge for me. I'm just not enjoying the process. And so we need to be ready to make those tough decisions for the right reasons, not because it's a bit difficult now and it's a bit challenging at the moment, and we're trying to learn something about ourselves and our ability to overcome these challenges. But if we realize that it's not the right challenge for us, then we need to be ready to say, actually, I'm going to invest my time, invest my attention, invest my other resources in a goal that is right for me. That might be something completely different, but we need to have that courage and that the ability and the flexibility, I think, the permission to ourselves to actually make those changes if we realize that it isn't the right goal for us.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, George. I think you've packed in a huge amount of detail and lots of tips and techniques into that 45 minutes that anyone listening will be able to take away. And just to say, today's session has been recorded. We will be sharing it with you. So if you have any other colleagues, friends, family, anyone in your networks that you think might benefit from listening to today's session, then please do circulate it to them. I'd also like to thank George and Gen Healthy Minds for supporting today's workshop. Gen Healthy Minds do a huge amount of work out in the apprenticeship community. George and Mike, who is also behind the scenes, go out and run loads of sessions with companies who are looking to get extra support in place for their apprentices. And George, you've been working with some incredible businesses, haven't you, up and down England and supporting their apprentices. So if that's of interest, please do get in contact. You can see all of the Twitter handles and social media handles going along at the bottom of the screen there. So if you've enjoyed today's session, feel free to share it on social media, but also please do reach out to us if there's anything that we can help you with. So before I finish up, George, can I just ask you to recap on those 5 top tips for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 5 top tips, first of all, we talked about stretching yourself, reaching for more than just the basics. So rather than just getting to the end of the apprenticeship program, for example, how far can you take this? Who can you become along the way? In fact, that then does go into our second tip, which is to set a goal that will change you and challenge you. And actually develop and evolve as an individual and develop personally, not just professionally as well. We talked about creating a vision for that third tip, and to be really, to create something that feels so magnetically powerful that it draws you towards it, but at the same time remaining grounded here in the reality of your present moment. So we don't get too focused on the future. We want that, but we also want to be acknowledging where we are right now as well. We talked about setting objectives as well as our 4th tip, Anna, and this was really around scheduling the time into your calendar, into your daily diaries, as to actually focusing on those important tasks, those important activities that are going to get you to these objectives, which might be around mastering technology, mastering public speaking. Maybe it's around getting onto committees and other roles that are going to help you achieve that endpoint goal. And finally, we talked about checking in with your progress along the way. So not just looking up at how much further you have still to come. Just taking that pause regularly, looking around you and acknowledging and appreciating how far you have already come.
Thank you so much, George. Absolutely brilliant session. And thank you all for joining us today to celebrate the 15th National Apprenticeship Week, National Apprenticeship Week 2022. There's been so much going on across the country. The buzz has been phenomenal. So thank you for joining us for today's session. Good luck with whatever else you're involved in as the week goes on. We will be following you on social media and trying to keep track of what everyone's up to. So do please share your activities with us. Thanks again to George. George, absolutely phenomenal, as always. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.